as far as, I mean, new agents, all of us really, it comes down to three pieces, right? It's leads, it's schedule or activity, and then it's skill. So when you break that down, it's like, if someone's not doing well, it's like first, do they have enough leads? And not only do they have enough leads, but do they have enough quality leads, right? Um, you can definitely, you can definitely kind of get your, first start at internet leads, age leads, just to get the reps in. But at a certain point, you want to have decent quality with quantity. So that would be step number one. So if that's covered, then step number two is the schedule stuff, right? Activity, which with the in-home stuff that we started with, it was pretty dialed in, right? It was like Monday, dial for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, dial for Friday, Saturday, and then do it all over again, right? But over the last several months, we figured out with telesales, it's 5 or 6 days a week, and it's just making sure that, maybe you get in the office around 8:30 to 12 is your first dial block. You're trying to get, two, three, four presentations, ideally one or two sales in that morning session. Midday is your next block from 12 to 3. You're getting some admin stuff done, maybe some recruiting. And then from 3 to about 7 is your second block. And then you strategically, based on the time, maybe at 3 o'clock, you're starting with the East Coast so that it's around 5 o'clock their time. And then the later you get, you work back time zones. So that's kind of step number two. So as long as you have enough leads, the activity's good. Then three is the skill, and skill is the one part that you really just, as long as the lead flow is there, you have enough presentations, your activities there, so you're actually showing up and working. The skill stuff will just kind of fix itself over time. And you experienced that. I know, Easton, like your first 2 3 months were pretty brutal, and then the skill finally caught up, and it was easy. Once the skill caught up, it was like the activity and stuff was all there. So, the skill stuff comes over time. We can train on that, which is stuff that I'm going to be talking about today. But if you have all the skill in the world, not enough leads, not enough activity, then it doesn't even matter, right? So that's the first piece that we're getting people plugged into. Like, let's fix the leads, let's fix your schedule, and then the skill set we can come in and help with.
Well, and I think it goes both ways. If you have a monster schedule and you do zero skill set development, then you can drag this on for a long period of time. So the concept of a rolling university was hey, when you're driving in between appointments, well, now you need to dedicate specific time in your blocks where, hey, if I've got like an hour drive to the office or a 30-minute drive to the office, or I'm taking an hour for lunch, like you don't constantly eat typically for an hour. So you could, put the food down for 15 or 20 minutes and then go, okay, so this week I sucked at the phone or my presentation was rough. So I need to do some kind of specific skill set activity that I'm putting good info into my brain. So even if you have a really strong working schedule, if you do literally nothing to improve besides just make the calls, you're going to drag out this suck phase longer than it needs to be. And then obviously, if you do zero work, but you're very, very skilled, like you got no leads, like one presentation, dude, you can only do so much volume. So
Right.
I think those go hand in hand very, very well. And that's where we've seen the big explosion is guys that they carry that schedule into skill set development with their repetitions, and we see them blow up out of nowhere.
Yeah. And really, like, part of that with the activity, I mean, my thing is, and we would do this in like door to door, where I would tell guys, like, we would have a morning meeting every day about 9 or 10 o'clock. And in door to door sales, the hardest part is getting to the doors, right? It's that resistance. Or for us, it's dialing the phone. And I would tell guys, I was like, dude, you have to make one decision every day. The one decision you have to make is just show up to the office or show up to the Zoom room. And then most of the time, because when you show up to that environment, it'll just propel you to work, right? And so for us, we're fortunate to have the Denver office where it's like new guys come in, we're like, don't don't try to work from home. You have an office right here. Just come to the office, and then accidentally you'll start working. Accidentally you'll make dials, and then you'll make sales. So that's the biggest thing for us is just make the one decision a day just to show up to whether that's Zoom or to the office. And then you'll just naturally it'll be like, well, I'm here, I might as well start working. And that sales resistance that we have to pick up the phone for the first dial, if Jesse right here is like, oh, well, I'm cranking, I'm like, well, I might as well too. And then I catch the momentum and then just keep going. The hardest part is just starting. So being around the right atmosphere is huge.
Because
Um,
you can get into an office. The express version is get into an office.
mhm.
Um, I'll literally preach on this till I'm dead, dude. It was single-handedly what saved my life in the business was making the hour and 15-minute drive to be next to Zach while he was doing his thing. Like he was selling a lot and building a lot. And just like making that tiny little bit of extra effort. And then by default, I ended up getting tons of extra help from him because I was showing up. So obviously, I'm a big believer in the office, and hopefully, if you guys are close to when you can force yourself in, because I think it's a game changer.
Yep.
Why don't we
So
step into the next phase, unless you want to add something else?
no, that's it. I was just gonna say let's get into like the tactical sales stuff.
Okay, you go ahead and let her rip, dude.
So this would be if you have pen and paper, this would be something good to take notes with because I mean everything that I've done has been taken from Easton. And when I first started, I kind of like forced Easton because I wanted to learn fast. I was like, hey dude, sit down with me right now and like walk me through this. Like write it down on paper, role play with me. Like it was kind of uncomfortable for you at first, right, Easton? I remember that first starting.
I'd never done a single role play in my life, so it was very awkward.
Yeah. And I was like, dude, I got to learn. So I'm going to make you like pitch me and like tell me what to do. So I would write this stuff down. Every training that we do in the Denver office, it goes back to this framework, this sales process. And I think so much of closing, there's not like these magic one-liners. Like, sure, there's certain word tracks and phrases that you need to say, but so much of closing is being very, very, very clear with what does the process actually look like what's the next step. And if you can clearly explain to someone what's the next step, they're going to be on the same page and they're going to feel comfortable moving forward. A lot of the times the reason people say they need to think about it or they don't want to move forward is because it's not clear, right? A confused mind will always say no. So if they're confused about what's the next step, what's the process, then most likely the default is no, I'm good, or let me think about it. Because they're still, even if it's subconsciously, they don't know what they need to think about. It's still unclear, so they'll just default to like, resistance, right? They'll step back. So it can be broken down into basically to sell every policy, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven steps. Is kind of the framework that we've come to with telesales at least. So first, and I'll just go through them. So intro is number one, why is number two, number three is structure, number four is suitability, five is the presentation, six is close, seven is the application. And the reason I broke it up like that is because each section has some important goal in it that will help the next part, be super simple. So I'm not going to go over like word for word the exact script for the whole thing. It would take us like 30 minutes. But like the main point, maybe the key phrases that we say to successfully like accomplish each step. So for intro, most people should know this. It's, hey Easton, this is Ty getting back to you about the form you filled out for the life insurance. You listed your beneficiary as Lindsay. Is that correct? Got it. I'm just the guy assigned to help you out. Did I catch you at work? So the main things on the intro is letting them know, like, I'm getting back to you on a request that you sent in. And then you want to clear the schedule by just figuring out, instead of saying, is now a good time? It's, did I catch you at work? If he's like, no, I'm good, then I proceed. If he's like, yes, I did, now it's, or yes, I am at work, now it's, okay, I assume so. What time are you off? I'm off at 5. All right, I don't have a 5. I'll call you at 6 or 6:30. What do you prefer? And then you just jump off the phone, right? So that's the intro piece. Once someone is like, hey, I'm good, I'm available, I'm off, we roll into the why. So the questions that I've been rolling into on the why is you want to give them some sort of direction. And so a good question to ask on the why portion is, and you have to preface it with this so you don't come across as like you're prying, is, just so I'm on the same page, Easton, were you looking for coverage, maybe something smaller to cover funeral costs, or something a little bigger to replace your income or pay off a mortgage when you pass? So role play with me a little bit, Easton, if you want to give me a direction here.
Yeah, more just, kind of looking for some supplemental income replacement in case I go.
Got it. Okay. And your beneficiary would be Lindsay. Is that your wife?
It is, yep.
Okay. Are we looking at coverage for both of you or just you?
Oh, probably just me. I'm the only one working.
Okay. So you're working, you're the breadwinner. Do you have any coverage existing, like through work or anything?
Yeah, I got 1 year salary replacement at work.
Got it. So basically, what you're looking for is wanting to make sure that if something happens to you, Lindsay has some money to help replace that income loss and help her with the transition. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, all the bills and stuff that pile up.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So that's the why, right? I'm asking enough questions to where, like, the cue in my head is like, I'll keep asking until I'm very clear and we get an agreement on what we're looking for. So the reaction when, some people ask, like, how do you know when you've asked enough questions? If the person at the end says something along the lines of like exactly or yep, that's it. There's confirmation of like, they tell me what they're looking for. I repeat it back to them in similar verbiage, but maybe slightly different in my own words. That signals to them that, hey, he understands, he knows what I'm saying. And then we get the agreement like, did I miss anything? Or is that correct? And he's like, yep, that's it. Nope, that's perfect. Now I'm done with the why. Um, any questions on that or anything I should expound on there, Easton?
Um, Only other question I have is, do you do any credibility building in your intro? Like state
Um,
license type stuff?
I tend to not provide the credentials up front, unless I can feel. So this whole time that I'm talking to someone, I'm listening to like their tonality and maybe signs that they're uneasy or busy or something. So if I get the sense that they're like, okay, like they're maybe, have you ever asked a question to someone on the phone and they're like, yeah, I guess there's like some hesitancy in their voice. That's when I'd be like, hey, real quick before we get too ahead of ourselves, let me send over a copy of my business card, has my credentials, my phone number, a picture of me, has my wife and daughter. So I'm the ugly one on the left. I'll say that every time and they always laugh. Um, so yeah, I'll do that if I need to, but typically that comes later, which I'll cover here in a sec. But
Okay, so yeah, so if I was giving you the like, well, I don't know, just kind of taking a peek at stuff, not really sure. Then you ask again, and if I'm like, yeah, just kind of more curious than anything really, and I keep giving you some resistance, and you're like, okay, well, anyway, before we get too far, info, and then you're like, that's kind of when you would provide.
right, yep, that's
Okay,
exactly.
got it. Okay, all
Um,
right. So
now,
next is
real quick, so something on this part. So I think all of us, this was the case for me. East, I know you mentioned it to me. When you're first starting out, some of the hardest clients to close are the older people, like 70 plus, who want like 200, 300, 500,000. Right? You're like, okay, you're 81. Is that correct? Okay. Were you looking for something small to cover funeral fund expense or something bigger? They're like, yeah, something small, just like 500,000. you know, you're like, okay, perfect. So we hear that and we're like, man, we know that that's going to be thousands a month. And for the most part, unless I guess Blake had that nuke earlier, so older ladies sold big policy, but for the most part, they can't afford more than like $200 a month, maybe 300, right? So the key there, when you get an older person in the why section and they're like, yeah, I want to leave 500,000 to my kids, my clarifying statement that like kind of starts to downsell them and like push us away from the big amounts is Okay, got it, Easton. So just so I'm on the same page, sounds like you're looking to leave as much as you can behind your family. Is that right?
Yep.
Yes. Now I assume, Easton, you're like most families, the coverage is important, but it has to fit the budget. Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay, got it. So we're looking to leave as much coverage behind that still fits your budget every month.
Yep,
Perfect.
exactly.
Perfect. So now I've come to the agreement that, hey, I will help you leave as much behind, but on the condition that it fits the budget, right? And if you miss that part and you just let them think that they can get 500,000 at an eight as an 85-year-old, unless they have like 2, 3,000 laying around and they're willing to spend it, you have to come to that agreement, like that step down. And then I'll do that again later as I get closer to presenting the numbers. So that's a that's a huge key there. Do you want me to answer some of these questions in here or just keep going?
No, keep going. We can answer them right at the end.
Okay. So once I got an agreement of like, hey, this is what we're doing, we're on to structure. So intro Y is done, on to structure. Easton taught me this early on. When you miss a deal, it's usually one of two things. Either you did a terrible job at the Y, you did not pull enough emotion out, or you missed structure. So structure is just basically letting them know what's going to take place today. So, and in sales terms, it's like the why, you're finding the problem, structure, you're providing the solution or the idea of the solution, right? You're not giving them the plan right there, but you're saying, hey, this is how we're going to fix your issue here, your gap. So the structure would sound something like, all right, makes sense, Easton. That's what you're looking for. So this stuff is pretty easy. The plans are non-medical, no blood work or physicals. They're all based on your age, health, income, any current insurance. So I'm just going to ask you some basic questions. And then once I understand, I'm going to plug you into our system, and our portal has access to every major carrier in the US. So what that allows us to do is find you the best plan, the best price, all that good stuff. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Perfect. Once we know, and then this is kind of like the soft close. Perfect. Easton, once we know which direction as far as a plan you want to go, because you get to customize it, what we'll do is we'll just send off a quick application to the insurance company for approval. It'll just take them about 1 to 3 days. Make sense? Okay, got it. Now, if they don't give me like a got it, I understand, something like affirmative, like if I sense any hesitancy in their voice, I'm not moving on past structure until we have a clear understanding of what's going to happen. Right. So if someone responds when I say, like, does that sound good? They say, yeah, I guess. Then I say, oh, I'm sorry. Was there something that was maybe confusing or did I miss something? And then I'll have them say, oh, well, it depends on the price. Right. So they'll give me an objection. And then I go back and re say what I said in the structure. So I'll say something like, if you gave me that objection, I would say, oh, yeah, I apologize. Like I said earlier, we'll narrow down which carrier in the US is going to give you the best plan. And then remember, you get to customize the plan to guarantee that it fits your budget. Does that sound good? And I'll re soft close. So that's the key on structure there. Any questions or anything I should clarify there?
Yeah, no, basically just like, hey, this is the process. This is what my job is. Pretty dang easy. You get to make it. I just send it in. Like that
Yep.
stuff is non-negotiable on every call.
Yep. And I found like recently in telesales, what we've our verbiage has shifted from um, I guess what it was to in-home to, we're going to shop all the carriers in the US to make sure that we find you the lowest plan. And I might even throw in something like, so you should only have to do this once. How does that sound? Something along those lines. I got that from Wiley. And it just takes away the, hey, well, I got to shop around or I got to think about it. Usually when I throw in that line of like, we'll look at all the carriers, so you should only have to do this once, they're like, oh, good, right? And if they say, oh, good, then it's done. It's a wrap. Yep. Good, good. Like Jocko. Um, oh, am I cutting out a little bit?
You're good. I still got you.
Okay, cool. So that's it on structure. Intro wise structured. So next is just suitability. pretty straightforward stuff. Like if you're not using a suitability sheet or a notepad, um, you need to write down, you need to understand what their situation is. How much does the husband make compared to the spouse? Um, know the meds, or more importantly, know what those meds are for, like which medical conditions they're for, any current insurance, right? We want to know the full picture because it's basically ammunition to be able to. I've never liked the word ammunition, but for lack of a better term, it's ammunition, but it's also just like painting the picture of their situation so that you can essentially find the gaps, right? So if I'm looking at my suitability sheet and Easton makes 6,000 a month and Lindsay makes 1,000, I'm going to say something like, "Oh, got it, Easton. So based on what I'm looking at here, I mean, you make 6,000 and Lindsay only makes one. I'm assuming this is why you guys are looking into this because obviously, with all your bills, I'm sure Lindsay can't keep things moving with just her 1,000 if yours is gone. Is that right?"
Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah, no way. And then you do have that work policy, 100,000 through work, but based on the math here, that would be gone in that's like 1 year of income replacement. I guess what does it look like after that if you guys don't have the coverage? So I'm reopening the why in the suitability part. So suitability, go through that. Do not skip. Like it's super important not to skip through this stuff, especially when you're new. I think for the first 6 to 9 months, I was texting Easton. This was back in home, but I was texting Easton in every single home after the suitability. So I gathered all the info and then I'm texting on the iPad. I tell the client, all right, I'm looking at the plans, but I'm texting Easton, hey, 65 years old, this, what do I do? Like, don't miss that. Like if you're in doubt, just reach out to your manager and ask just to be clear because the last thing you want to do is quote someone an IUL when they have a certain med that definitely won't get approved for an IUL. And now you're backtracking and you got to convince them to do a whole life that's double the price for the same coverage. So don't skip the suitability part. Um, Next would be the presentation. So the presentation is just broken up into two parts. I try to keep it super simple. First is the benefits, listing the benefits of the plan. I think your business is stickier when your clients understand what they're getting. And it creates, I guess, certainty when you do show price of how much value they're getting. So the benefits is the first part, and then the second part is price. So benefits might sound something like this. For example, let's say I'm talking to you, Easton. You want 250,000 of permanent coverage. So Americo IUL. I don't know if you'd get approved, but we'll see. So I would say, all right, Easton, go ahead and grab that pen and paper. Well, let me give you the transition. So I finished suitability. All right, Easton, that's it for the suitability questions. Let me pull up the portal to start looking at plans. Will you grab a pen and paper so I can have you jot down this info, all the quotes and information and stuff? Let me know when you're ready. All right, he's ready. So, Easton, a couple things about this plan. Life insurance can be confusing, so I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Number one, this plan is permanent, so it'll never expire. Number two, this plan covers death of any cause. So it's not one of those accidental deals where you have to die on a Tuesday getting hit by a bus. If you pass, it pays. It also will cover you if you get sick while you're still alive. So if you get cancer, heart attack, stroke, any internal organ disease or failure, this plan will allow you to file a claim and access a portion of the death benefit while you're still alive to pay for medical bills, bills around the house, whatever you want. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm always checking for understanding. Does that make sense? A lot of times they'll ask a follow-up question and I'll clarify there. Number two would be, or the third benefit would be disability. So chronic illnesses are covered here, which in another word is disability. So if you can't walk without assistance, feed yourself, bathe yourself, you're in a coma for an extended period of time, that kind of thing, Easton, you can file a claim and also access some of the benefit while you're still alive. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Last thing, this is or two more things. So this is immediate coverage, and I'll plant this seed of like we're doing this now. So Easton, this is immediate coverage. So let's say we figure out which plan you get approved on Tuesday, tomorrow. Something happens to you Wednesday, it'll pay the full benefit out to Lindsay, your wife, so she doesn't have to worry about it. Make sense?
Oh yeah.
Perfect. And then last thing, the premium is fixed. So you're the youngest you'll ever be right now. And that price, when we go over pricing, whichever one you pick, it's going to be locked in for life because it's a permanent plan. Now, does that all make sense, Easton? Does that sound like the type of plan that maybe you were looking for?
It's exactly what I was looking for.
Perfect. So I'm getting that confirmation that, again, another soft close of like, yep, this is it. Then, usually there'll be follow-up questions. Like I get a lot of, well, is there a 2-year wait period? And I love that question because it's like, well, no, remember, Easton, if you get approved today and something happens to you tomorrow, it'll pay out the full benefit to your wife, Lindsay. This isn't like some of the plans you see on TV that are like $9.99 for 10,000. That stuff has a wait period. This is like real insurance.
Okay, makes sense.
That's it. So first part of presentation. Second part is transitioning into numbers. So again, I'm like super repetitive on what's going to happen next. So I just finished the numbers, or I just finished the benefits. I'm like, all right, Easton, you still got that pen and paper? Okay,
Yep.
perfect. So like I said, you get to customize this plan. And remember earlier, we both agreed that the coverage is important, but it has to fit the budget, right? Okay, so I'm going to punch this into the portal and it's going to spit out some recommendations. But Easton, I want you to tell me up or down, make adjustments until we find the perfect fit. Sound good?
Perfect.
So if they say like sounds good, it's like, all right, they agreed that we are doing something. It's just a matter of like which one. It's not yes or no, are we doing this? It's yes or yes, which one, right? And then this is an adjustment I made in the last month and it's worked well for me and all the guys and gals up here. We start bottom up. So in telesales, in home, I would go top down, right? I show the top number and then go down. For the most part in telesales, I'm going bottom up because I want them to tell me, no, that's not enough. I want to see this. I want them to know what the price is and then tell me to crank it up, right? So um, it might sound something like this. All right. So first option, Easton, I know you said you were looking for, a couple 100,000 of covers to replace your income. The first option that the system recommended, this I got that from Harold Durana. The first option the system recommended would be 50,000 of coverage. And this would be enough to, and I'll tell them the benefits, right? Let's say for Easton, this would be enough, Easton, to replace your income for a full year. Make sure Lindsay didn't have to come out of pocket for the funeral final expenses. You're tying it. It's not just a number. This is from Jake Conan back in the day, and I'm sure you still use it now. You're tying that benefit or that number to what it's going to do for them, in their life. It's not just a generalized thing. It's like Lindsay will use this to pay for this and this and this, right? Because now they're thinking about like, oh, will this be enough for her? And it's creating that emotion again. So
Well, and
fit.
I want to freeze you on
Mhm.
that bottom up thing followed by the system recommendation. You're trying to disassociate yourself with the sale as much as you can. Like, hey, this is what it came back at auto, like just on auto number gen, and that is due to their budget, right?
Mhm.
Like that you do that very on purpose. And you do it really, really well, and then you go, oh, system recommendation just as an entry level option is basically 50, and then you still have cranked, like maybe 100 or 200 as options. But if you go basically you're crunching 250 and you're like, okay, this is 953 a month. Maybe we should not lead with that. Let's go, hey, system option at 50 is actually affordable, and then you can work your way back north, which is a change. This is like within the last month, we just tweaked this.
Right.
So I just wanted to comment on that because the system recommendation tied to what the benefit covers, like that's like a little home run from a bottom up sale. So I love that adjustment.
Yep. It allows us to downsell. and it also gives them the control. Like for example, I had a guy last week. He was looking for like, he told me he was looking like 30, 40, 50,000, but I started at 5 because he was like 80, and 5,000 was like $60, and I didn't have a good gauge on like what he was willing to spend. And so I was like, all right, first option the system recommends is 5,000. That one's only $54 a month. He's like, oh, that's not enough. Put it up to 30,000. So I was like, all right, he knows 5 is 50. He automatically cranked it up. Like, I will happily show you 30,000 is 283, sir. Here you go. 30,000 is this. He's like, okay, well, what's 40? So he just kept bumping himself up higher and higher. I didn't have to try to convince him, he needed to spend more. So, and I think on telesales, because they have the power to just like click, hang up, I've had too many times where I do start with the top option and they're immediately either just like click, or you can just tell they're off, after you drop that price. Whereas in home, you could write the price down, 3 options, turn it over and just shut up and let them like sit in the awkwardness and like think of like, man, I can't afford this, but I need to do it. Over the phone, they have the power because they can just hang up. So,
Sticker shock.
right. So, top down. So it would sound like this. So, all right, Easton, first option, 50,000. This would do this, this, and this. On that paper, go ahead and write down 50,000. The monthly premium next to that, write down $100 a month. You got that? And I'm going very slow so that it gives them the opportunity to tell me, oh, that's perfect. Let's do it. Right. Or if they're like, okay, sounds good, then I know, okay, they're ready for the next number. Right. So it gives them kind of like a control, and then I can catch them where they're comfortable and they can just decide to close themselves. So 50,000 is this. Now, Easton, next option the system recommends is 100,000, and 100,000 of coverage would do X, Y, and Z. Go ahead and write down next to that. This one is $200 a month. And then depending on the day, how I'm feeling, I'll either roll with just 2 numbers and then ask if I need to adjust, or I'll give them 3. But lately it's been, all right, Easton, so out of those 2 options, which one do you feel like fits the budget and leaves enough behind for Lindsay? Or do we need to adjust up or in between those? And then it gives them, so again, it's a yes or a yes. Like, this isn't, we got to think about it. It's which one are we doing? And so at that point, Easton, you're either going to tell me, let's go with that, or more often than not, they're like, let's see 75,000. And then they pick it. Right. So let's assume you said that. All right, Easton. So 75,000 is $150 a month. Is that where you were hoping to fall? Is that comfortable for you?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'd like to get started.
Okay. And then my closing statement is the same every time. It's just getting the driver's license. It's all right. Sounds good. Well, next step, we just need to pull up the application to submit to the carrier. Go ahead and grab that driver's license. And then I give them the reason why. So if you ask them for something, the safest thing to do is give them the reason why you need that. So, Easton, one of the things they're going to ask for is their driver's license. Will you grab that while I pull up the application portal here? So he grabs it, and the reason there's like some debate, or we've had it up here at least, on like, when do you tell them what the application is going to ask for, right? My thing is, I want to get them in motion first by going to grab the driver's license. Like, yes, we're doing this. Go and grab the driver's license. You grab the driver's license, and now we're in the app. So the app is the last phase. So in the app, there's like, the app is very simple, but there's also some key pieces that I feel like make everything go smoothly. And one of them is this. So they give you the driver's license, and let's say you're in America. America doesn't need the driver's license, but I just want to get something from them and then continue that momentum through the application. So they come back. By this time, they're grabbing the driver's license. I'm punching in their name, right? I'm punching in their email. I'm punching in their phone number. Whatever basic info I have, I'm punching that in. And then Easton, come back with me. You say, all right, I got the driver's license, and I'll role play from there.
All right, got my license.
All right, go ahead. I'm ready for the driver's license number.
CO 553771.
All right, got it. And then the spelling of your name, Easton, like the bat, Padden with two D's. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, date of birth is this, email is this, phone number is this. Is that all correct?
Yep.
All right. And then this is a key here, and this was an addition that we made a couple months ago too. All right, Easton, before we get too far ahead, just a heads up on this application. You have car insurance, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like the exact same deal as car insurance. They're going to need your like you already gave me your driver's license number to verify your identity. They're going to ask for your social to verify your medical records. And then they're not going to charge you anything today because you're not approved, but they are going to need your routing account number. So once you're approved in the next 1 to 5 days, they'll have that on file to activate the policy. Sound good?
Yep. Sounds good.
So it's all just a very casual. The tonality's like, obviously, of course, you got car insurance before. Don't make this weird. It's no different. And it's all strung together. And I think the banking thing is key in how I say it. I'm relieving sales pressure by saying they're not going to charge you anything today until you're approved, but they will need the routing and account number so that when they approve you in 1 to 3 days, they can activate the policy or they can draft the first premium. I like activate the policy because it doesn't make them think of like the money. It makes them think, oh, I want to be covered, right? And then at the end, you just say, does that all make sense? So that's a huge thing. But I'm in the app already. So as soon as they're like, yep, that sounds good. Okay, and height and weight, blah blah blah. The keys on the app is before you ask social, skip to the question where you ask, Easton, what state were you born in? Montana, got it. So obviously you're a US citizen. Yes. What's your social? Right. So that just goes hand in hand. And then you fill the rest of the stuff out, go through health questions. During the health questions, I'm cracking jokes. I always ask them if they skydive or scuba dive, anything crazy like that. They always laugh. If you want to try something out of Brian Boatman, he asks some people if they do heroin on the weekends. So you could ask that, but something to like make them laugh throughout the application to relieve the sales pressure. So um, now, one thing you can do with banking, if you haven't heard of I don't tend to do this because I prefaced it up front enough, but I don't think it's a bad idea to, when you get to banking, say something like, I got the routing pulled up as this in our system. Will you please verify that? My verbiage is grab the beneficiary. Your beneficiary is Lindsay, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I'm towards the end of the application here, Easton. And then I remind them again, you're not being charged right this second. All right, Easton. Last part, like I said earlier, they're not charging you today because you're not approved yet, but they do need that routing and account number so that once they approve you in 1 to 3 days, they can activate the policy. Are you going to be using checking or savings?
Checking.
Checking. Okay. I'm ready for the routing number whenever you are. And then I just shut up. Like they either have it there with them or they go grab it. But I'm like very, very assumptive because they've already agreed with me twice that, hey, they're not charging me today, but they are going to ask, for that stuff because they're going to need it when they approve me in a couple days. So I think that's important to let them know that they are going to be charged. Do not just sell the approval or do not. I used to say, we need routing account number to make sure there's no money laundering or fraud or you have a way to pay for it. Like that stuff can work, but it's like too dicey to where you'll get that phone call or someone who misunderstood. Like you want to be pretty clear with, we need this because once approved, they're going to draft that first premium. Right. Anything to add on that?
Just like you're really good about not being, such a normal part. Like, dude, you're trying to purchase insurance. Obviously, we need your stuff. So, like, why would we be weird about getting their stuff when they're trying to buy?
Yeah.
They have to pay for it. So I think just making it this really normal thing. And the only other secret that I've heard you use before is if you are kind of having one of those where it's a coin toss, like, is this gonna finish well? Because we're kind of like, it feels okay. You can go like, hey, just want to make sure that you are using some kind of like premier bank, like a big nationwide one, so that we pair you with the right carrier. And then they'll give you the name of the bank, and then you could Google Wells Fargo routing Colorado and pull it up. Like, okay, are you using checking or savings? Okay, checking, cool. Let me confirm 102 00076, whatever it is the correct routing number to match your bank. Yes. Okay, what's your account? And then I just
Yep.
ask them. If you're having a lot of weird bank pushback, you can get the name and the state, Google it, and then read it back, and then just assumptively ask for the account number. I think that's the only other. If you're having a
Well,
hard time with bank stuff, it's a nice little ease into it thing.
yeah, that's an arrow in the quiver for sure. Like, um, if I ever feel like they're a little hesitant, then yeah, I'll pull that. But usually, again, it goes back to the first thing I said. It's just like very, very, very clear with the process and the expectations. And like I'll repeat myself multiple times throughout, as you guys have seen. But like I don't want there to be any doubt. Like, what's the pros and cons of me repeating myself 3 times throughout the presentation about a certain step? Well, the pros are they're very clear on what's going to happen. The cons are they're like, okay, dude, I get it. But I'd much rather have like clarity as opposed to maybe a little annoyance. But I've never even ran across that. Like, no one's ever said, okay, dude, we get it. Like, no one's ever said that, you know?
Yep.
Now, last thing on the application, or two more things, because this can hurt people if you get too used to post dating. And clients are tricky because they convince us that it can't come out right away, right? They can't afford it right now. Like it can't come out in a couple days. So the verbiage there is super important. So after I grab the routing account number, I will then repeat. I'm on the page still. So I got the info. Now I will repeat again what the process is from here. So, all right, Easton, that's it. We're just wrapping up the application. Now, just so you know what's going to happen next, I'm going to submit this application today. The insurance company is going to take 1 to 5 business days to process an approval. Now, if I'm in America and I already got the green check, I might say 1 to 2 days, or I might say, because you're super healthy, Easton, it'll probably only take them a day, right? So Easton, next 1 to 5 days, they're going to approve it. Once you get approved, like I said, they're going to draft that initial premium and you'll be live and covered. So if they approve you tomorrow and then something happens Wednesday, Lindsay's taken care of. Sound good?
Yep.
Right. So now I just what's the word? Like um hit not hid, but like breeze past the fact like, hey, we're gonna charge, you're gonna get charged in the next couple days, but it's for this benefit, right? So they're not gonna, when I tie that benefit at the end, Easton, once approved, they're gonna draft in the next 1 or 2 days, and then you'll be covered. So if something happens the next day, Lindsay's taken care of. Sound good? Now, if there was any hesitancy, they'd be like, okay, yeah, that's good because I do need, I want to make sure I'm covered, right? Now, even after that, sometimes they'll say, I don't know, like, can it come out later? So hit me with that, Easton. So, yep. And if something happens to you the next day, Easton, you're covered.
Awesome. Is it okay if I move this out? I'd like to pay for it in like a couple weeks. I like it to come out in a few weeks.
Yeah. So the first one is going to be drafted upon approval. That way, if something happens to you, you're covered. And then any month after that, if we need to change it to a specific day, we can. Does that sound good?
Oh, okay, cool. So I can move it next month, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Yep. And that's just because like most people they don't want to go against like the norm, right? We're all conditioned to follow, or at least most of our clients are conditioned to just follow orders and like go with the flow. If they're like, no, like literally there's going to be $0 in the account in the next couple of days unless they, if they try to draft, then I'll be like, okay, well, it's going to be some extra paperwork. But if it helps you out, we can push it out to when do you get paid next? Next Friday?
Yeah, next Friday.
Okay. So it's a little bit of extra paperwork on my end, but if it helps you out, then what I can do is set it up to where it won't start till Friday. Would that help you?
That'd be perfect.
Yeah. And they're always like, oh, thank you so much. I'm like, yeah, it's no big deal. I'm happy to help. Um, so that's that's how to get over the banking thing. So just tell them what's going to take place. Don't ask, do you have a day that you want this to start? Because it's always going to be later. It's always going to be later. So just tell them this is what's going to happen. And then if they really, really object and there's like validity to it, then, you know, I'll do the extra paperwork of clicking the button and give them that.
Well, dude, that was very thorough and bomb. I appreciate you helping out. If you want to, I saw that Nick, we got like 7 minutes left until we hit our hour. I don't want to keep it more than an hour. Nick was just asking about if you typically get all the meds. I just ask him. Um, I know that 37 is a lot. It's been a little bit of a minute since I've had someone with 37 meds, but if you don't get them, then there's no way to determine like how serious or not serious the meds are. So that could adjust them from like we think they can get a level plan to we get the med list and there's a clear dementia medication on there because you can just Google them. If you don't know what the med's for, literally Google it because when you call, I just Google it. I'm like, I don't know what that is either. Type. So always Google meds if you don't know what they are. It'll tell you exactly what they're typically prescribed for. So
Mhm.
I would always try to get last decade and every medication prescribed and taken now, prescribed and didn't fill, didn't take, haven't taken it for a while. I need everything in the last 10 years so that you're not overselling an impossible product for them to get approved for. And it's going to end up not really being a sale. If you pitch them 300K for this cheap price, and then you have to go pivot to 30K for this, you're head faking yourself into getting a sale that you're not ever getting. So it's just going to really hurt you in your pivot sale if you don't be as thorough as you can with health and meds. Anything else you want to add to that, Chef?
With the med stuff, so my verbiage on the suitability is just, last 10 years, any cancer, heart attack, stroke, got it. Do you take any meds on a daily or weekly basis? Yeah. Okay. What are they for? I don't care the name of the med unless it's like, you know, a heart failure. I'll ask, okay, what's the name of the med? But usually I want them to tell me diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol. I'm not trying to sit there and write down every med. So
And if all else fails, run an RX through Americo because
mm,
that'll tell you if they're like, oh, I'm really looking for a term. I'm on 38 meds. And you're like, okay, what about heart, liver, lung, brain, kidney, any big failures? Nope, all good. Just take a lot of meds. Just run a prescription check. And if they get booted, then you can go back and get some clarity because that will save you a little time.
right. There is one last thing to close up my app. It's again letting them know what's going to happen next, and it leaves me open to be able to get someone who gets declined for an IUL or something, a pivot point. So it's like, all right, we're going to get this submitted. Last signature, send that code over. Got it. Okay. So from here, Easton, two things are going to happen. One of two things is going to happen. Number one, they approve you. In the next 1 or 2 days, they'll activate it with that first premium. They'll mail out the policy in 1 to 2 weeks. Now, and this is my pullback again to bring them in and say, like, oh, I need this. Now, Easton, if they decline you for some reason, no worries. It's not the end of the world. We have a bunch of different carriers that we can try and we'll pivot to the next best thing. Sound good? So now we're on the firm understanding like, hey, there is a chance you could get declined, which creates fear of loss. They want this coverage more, but also like the reality is like, hey, they could get declined. So I don't want to leave myself in a corner that they are dead set on like the Americo IUL only, and we can't pivot to a mutual whole life if it gets to that. So I want to leave it open because you can shoot yourself in the foot if you don't do that. So
Well, awesome, dude. Hopefully you guys took a ton of notes, intro-wise structure, close, suitability, presentation. Or
yep.
intro-wise structure, suitability, presentation, close.
And the app.
So I will get this is recorded so you guys can listen to this on repeat over and over and over and over, which I would, because if you do these things over and over again and you don't miss those 6 points, you will by default, you will close more because you've got all the data and information you need. Your structure is very solid. You're able to have some pivot points. This was great, Ty. Dude, I really appreciate you getting on and sharing. This was awesome.
Of course, happy to help.